Hey now, Rob Buhler here for Buhler Bro Flies and the Kern River Fly Shop. Today we're going to be tying the coffee cup stone. It's a combination of two of my favorite stone flies, the Kaufman Stone by Randall Kaufman and the Stall Cup Biot Stone by Shane Stallcup. Couple of factors that make it an excellent fly to fish year-round on the Kern and on several other waters. Number one is it's a multi-species fly. Not only does it represent in this color scheme the golden stonefly, but also covers for the yellow stonefly. And then in the golden stonefly, there's multiple generations of that nymph available every year on the water. So they basically hatch every 2 years. The nymph comes out of the egg, and it takes 2 years for it to grow to size to hatch into the adult. So the season that is hatching at about a size 8, there's also a 1-year-old nymph on the river that's down to about a size 12, 14, or 16. So there's always smaller sizes available on the water. And I like to fish this in smaller sizes too. Even if there's size 8s hatching, a lot of times a size 12 or 14 will get you better action. And this is a size 14 here, which covers both that golden stonefly and the yellow Sally nymph too. So we'll go ahead and remove this from the vise here and drop in our hook to get started. And like I mentioned, we're using a size 14 hook. This one happens to be a J Stockard 720 heavy hook. It's in a bended wire elongated shank, a 3x long shank, similar to the 200R and the TMC or TMCO hooks, but it's much stronger. Don't use those TMCO 200R hooks, they'll bend out with bigger fish. Make sure to use a heavier hook. Another equivalent is the 2305 at the fly shop, but they're a little bit shorter. One of the neat things about this fly is the head that I have on it here. It's by Flyman Fish Co. And it's substituted for a bead head. It's called a nymph head, and it's in the stonefly variation. It's tungsten also, but it has the shape of an actual stonefly head, or very similar to that. So it creates a very close profile to the natural. And behind that stonefly head, we're going to start by adding a little bit of lead-free wire in size 020. I like the lead-free just for conservation purposes. And we're going to take that lead-free wire and take maybe 7 or 8 wraps of that. And after you get that done, pinch the wire, the bulk of the wire in the middle, and you can rotate one end, and that'll quickly remove the end. Then you can do the same process on the other side. And then we'll slide that wire bunch right up into that head, and that's going to help not only give us a little bit extra weight, create a nice profile for our thorax, but then also hold that head in place too. And the thread we're going to use is a tan. It's a 6/0 uni thread. And we're going to start by attaching that right behind that wire bundle. And make a little dam there. And we'll trim our tag end first. And create a little dam right behind that wire. And that's going to hold that in place right in that tungsten head. And we could take a few wraps up behind that head too, and that's going to be the first securing wraps for that head. We'll add some material up there a little bit later to really secure that into place. But that'll be the our starter little wraps up there. And then we'll bring our thread right to the dam area right at the back of the wire. And the next material we're going to tie in is the tailing material. The traditional material on the Kaufman stone and the Biot stone is a biot, but we're going to use buggy nymph legs in golden color, and it's got a nice mottled look, and it's also translucent. It's a little bit see-through. It's one of the other reasons I like it a lot. So we'll just take one of those strands And we're going to tie it in on the near side of the shank and work our way down the side of the shank, keeping that leg material aligned on our side. So that's going to create our tail coming out of one side. And then we'll work that thread right back up to where we started, behind the wire wraps. And we'll trim that tail. We're going to trim it about 1/3 of the length of the hook shank. And we're going to take that excess and tie it in on the other side. And that's going to be our tail on the other side. Normally, often I tie a lot of my tailing materials in at the back of the hook. But on this one, we have several materials going in. And this is creating a nice smooth abdomen by tying our material all the way down the abdomen. And once we get that second tail in place on the opposite side, we'll take one wrap back up the shank just so we can let the thread rest while we trim that other side. And then we're going to start adding our dubbing material for the abdomen. I've been using Semi Seal in crawdad color. The original material for the Kaufman stone is a mix of Angora and other synthetics and natural materials, natural dubbing materials. But this one's real easy. It comes with a nice mix of long fibers, short fibers, different colors, and a little bit of flash all in one bag, so that's cool and easy. And then the stall cup stone has a biot for the body, which looks really neat, but it's fragile and it comes unraveled really easily after a couple of fish, so it's not near as durable. It's one of the reasons I like this body here. So we're going to add just a little bit of that dubbing material. Start by adding just a touch of that dubbing material there. And moving that thread back down to the base of the abdomen, right at that tail. And taking one wrap of the dubbing material around. And we're going to pause at that point. And tie in our ribbing material. And our ribbing material is vinyl rib. And we're using the midge size and the amber color. So we'll take a little strip of that and mount the rounded side facing out towards you. With just a little, we're going to just wrap a little bit in there, a little tag in, just enough where we can get it secured. And take those first wraps and make them a little bit, make good tight securing wraps. So we want to make sure this rib material is in place here and doesn't come out after we catch a couple fish. And then we're going to continue with our dubbing here. Keep that tight there. We're going to add some more dubbing and work our way up the abdomen. And this fly's been fishing excellent all summer long. I've been using it on a dry dropper rig for the most part, and it's been the first fly coming down off my dry fly. I've been using a big foamy fuzzy wuzzy or a oversized hopper, foamy hopper, and this thing's just been fishing excellent all summer long. So we'll work our dubbing up the abdomen and then add more dubbing as we need as we go. And we don't want to add too much on it at a time here. Just a little bit of dubbing is all we need. We're just creating a nice thin profile on our abdomen here. It's going to help that fly sink a little better. A lot of people overdress, or I think overdress their stone flies. This one's a little bit smaller profile at the back end. I think that helps fish a little better. And then if you bulk up your thorax up here, it creates a nice little contrast too. So we'll continue the dubbing right on up into that thorax area and come up over that wire. And then we're going to wrap our D-rib forward. We're going to start by wrapping away. First wrap's going to be right at the base of the abdomen down there, right by the tail. And we're going to keep these wraps relatively tight too, to keep them from coming unraveled. And we're not going to do one wrap right in front of the last. We're going to leave a little space in between each wrap to let some of that dubbing material come through. And work our way up through the abdomen. Maybe 7 to 9 wraps, covering about half of the hook shank. I'm going to hold that in place while I bring my thread back a little bit here. And that's about where I'm going to do one more wrap, and that's going to help secure this in place up underneath the thorax. Take several good thread wraps to really tighten that down for us. Again, we don't want this coming unraveled when we get a couple of fish. And now we're going to add some more dubbing to this thorax to beef up our thorax a little bit. This will also fish well in a European style nymph rig, check nymphing. But I have a variation that's probably better for that. It's the jig variation. And it's just got it's a little bit heavier with the jig hook and jig bead on there. So if you're fishing that Euro style, this fish is excellent with it, but maybe go with that jig hook just to make it a little heavier and that slotted tungsten bead. So we're beefing up our thorax here, making a nice little contrast between the abdomen and that thorax area. And the next material we're going to add is our wing case. And for the wing case, I've been using medallion sheeting in buggy brown. It's got a nice little model to it too. And we're going to cut a strip about the width of the hook gap or gape and tie that on top of the thorax, keeping it even on both sides. Check here. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's wrapping down. You want it to wrap down and cover both sides. Like I said, it's relatively wide here, but you'll see why in a second when we bring that up over the top. And then bring your thread back to the end of the abdomen area. And we're going to go back to our tailing material, which was that buggy nymph legs in golden. And we're going to tie in one of those legs on the near side of the hook and drop that down just below the lateral line on your side of the hook or on the near side of the hook. And then as we go forward, you can switch hands here a little bit and take your left hand and pull that leg forward and hold it in place as we come over with the thread. A couple wraps and that moves the thread forward and tightens up our leg in the front here, but it leaves us a little space between where that leg is secured and the eye or the head of the hook. And then we're going to trim the back end about toward the back of the shank there, toward the rear of the shank. And if we have enough excess, we'll take that over to the other side and do the exact same thing on the opposite side of the hook. You could do a couple securing wraps and then you can move your material into place. And same thing just below the lateral line on the opposite side of the hook. And if there's a little bit excess coming out at the front on your legs up there, that's good, because I'll show you, and we can use that to control our legs in a second before we do our final trim. And then I'll trim this near the back. We'll do our final trim at the end. Then the last material, I think, that we're adding is our thorax material, which is ostrich herl, and that's in tan. And that adds the nice filaments that are found in the natural stonefly on the underside, or represents the filaments really well that are found on the underside of a stonefly. And we'll trim, I'm going to take 3 of these off of the stem here. Depending on the thickness and the length, you can use different quantities. And we'll wrap all 3 of those in by the base of the ostrich herl. And then bring our thread forward to just behind the head. And we'll leave it resting there as we wrap our ostrich herl forward. Making wraps around the body. And then one in front of the last. And you can see how that creates a nice fluffy filament appearing material. And you can stroke those legs back at this point. That's one of the reasons that helps to leave that material a little bit long. You can stroke or sweep those back and out of the way as we finish off our ostrich herl. And notice I'm coming around holding the ostrich herl in place with my left or material hand, and then coming around with my bobbin hand to wrap that around the shank. And then we'll bring our thread up and behind that ostrich, that last wrap of ostrich. That's going to secure it in place. Take a second wrap and we'll trim our excess. And we can kind of tuck our legs back into place at this point. And we'll pull that wing case over the top to help finish this off. And pull that wing case taut and bring that thread right behind that stonefly head, right behind those eyes, and secure your wing case material. And you can see why we used a nice wide strip here. It gets condensed down once you wrap that onto the body and tie it off behind the head there. Looks pretty good. And we'll trim our excess. Or tag end. Just one more wrap to secure that in, and then we're pretty much finished here. We'll do either your whip finish or your half hitch knots, whatever you're comfortable with. Gonna do a few half hitches. A little tip here, this fishes really well up in the eastern Sierras too. Stoneflies get overlooked in the Sierras, but there's stonefly population on the upper and lower Owens, and then obviously all those creeks too have a good stonefly population. And nobody's fishing stoneflies, so it's something that the fish see regularly, but they're not getting stuck by flies that represent stoneflies, so it's a good option to have in your fly box when you're up on the eastern Sierras too, as well as the current. And then we'll trim those front legs just in front of the hook eye there. And the back legs, I'd love to fish them this long, but then they get fouled underneath the hook every once in a while, so I cut them right near the the back of that hook shank. And then we can fish it like this, but that wing case is not super durable. It's pretty tough material, but it'll eventually rip apart with the fish. So you can finish it several ways. We can take Zap-A-Gap and coat it with a little Zap-A-Gap. I'm going to take just a touch of Zap-A-Gap and put that on the thread wraps on the underside. And that's going to just lock those thread wraps in. That's definitely not going to come undone. And there's several ways we can coat the back of the wing case here. And to help represent an emerging wing case, traditionally it's been bulked up with a little bit of epoxy and keeps it clear, but it shows that it's an emerging wing case and there's some wings starting to come out of there. Another way of taking care of that same representation lately has been with a UV application. And I have Solarez, which is a UV product. And we're just going to coat on, do a little coating here, not real heavy. So you can do this with epoxy, the Zap-A-Gap, or any UV product. We're going to take our UV light just to kind of lock that in. It takes about 10 seconds, excuse me, with these UV lights to set up that material there. And after we let it set for about 10 seconds, we're going to drop in another coat. So the first coat's just a setting coat, and then the second coat's going to help build up a little appearance of an emerging wing case here. And then it's also going to just really secure this material, and we'll be able to catch, hopefully, lots of fish before it falls apart or before we lose it. Then we'll lock it or nail it again with that UV light. And not only do I secure it here with the UV light, but I also let them set up in the sun too afterwards if I can. So this is just a first set. And then we're pretty much done here. So we got a solid representation of a golden stonefly or a yellow Sally, and it's in that smaller size, fishes well year-round. It's got a nice thin abdomen, natural profile too with that ribbing, the D-rib, and then a excellent natural profile with that Flyman Fish Co. head. These also, the Flyman Fish Co. heads also come in a brown color and a black color, but this gold has just been fishing dynamite all summer long, so it's what I've been using. Hopefully you guys can tie up a few of these flies and get out on the river and catch a few fish of your own. Again, if you've been watching these videos and you have any suggestions, we'd love to hear from you and get a little feedback while we work on our production on this side, and you can give us some feedback on the content. Thanks so much. Have a good one. We'll talk to you guys later.